So I've been on YouTube 2 years at this point, and I have had my share of ups and downs with consistency and with motivation. And I have tried a bunch of things that worked and a bunch of things that didn't work, some things that I thought were going to help and actually derailed my consistency. So I've tried a lot of stuff. So in this video, I want to take you through kind of my 8-ingredient smoothie, if you will. I just want to take you through chronologically all the stuff I tried. Some of it worked, some of it didn't work. And I'm finally at the point where all of these things, these 8 things combined together, have made it so easy for me to be consistent. I think by the end of this video, you'll have a very easy plan for how to stay consistent, whether you're writing a book or you're starting a YouTube channel or just kind of doing your own thing where you don't have kind of the person-to-person accountability of like having a boss. So I think this will be really helpful for you in those types of endeavors. So the first ingredient that worked for me, the first thing that I realized was there needs to be a balance of creation and consumption. And so before I started a YouTube channel, overbearingly, the emphasis was on the consumption, reading books, watching movies, social media, mostly a lot of books and podcasts in my case. And I had so much information in my head that was just really clogging up my brain space. And so I realized early on that I need an output, and that's kind of why I started a YouTube channel. And then things swung the other way. I had this output, and at the time I was doing 3 videos a week. They're, in some cases 20-minute long videos. You get a lot of ideas out in 20 minutes, 3 a week. You do that for a few months, and after, about the 35 video mark, I'm like, I'm running out of ideas. And I realized that a lot of the main ideas that I had developed over the years from all of that consumption were starting to run dry. And so that's the first thing, is you need to continually get inspiration from things that you consume, and those 2 things really need to be balanced. And so I had that idea. That was the first idea I had, and I realized I don't know that it was enough. I had the idea, okay, this is the philosophy, I need to have my creation and consumption balanced, but just because I had that idea didn't move the needle enough. So that brings me to the second thing that I discovered. So I realized that I had the philosophy and the desire that I want my creation and my consumption to be equal. Now, when you are outputting at a high level, 20-minute videos, 3 videos a week, that's going to require a high level of intentional consumption. And I realized that was going to take some discipline to consume things intentionally, things that are thoughtful, things that are intellectual, to really put my emphasis on those type of things so that it will trigger good ideas in my own mind. So even though I had that desire, I found that sometimes I didn't have the self-discipline to engage in that kind of consumption and creation. I'm having a motivation problem. So then I had this idea. I got this Start Today journal by Rachel Hollis. Now, this is meant to be a daily practice. You say 5 things you're grateful for, and then 10 dreams that you want to make happen. And this was very motivating for me because as I'm down in the trenches trying to be self-disciplined, I could look up to the bigger vision. This is what I want to do. And that was so motivating for me. This really worked for a couple months. I'm doing this every day, going to the coffee shop at 6 a.m. That was maybe a little too aggressive. And it really worked for a while. However, then as the end came to this strategy, I realized that sometimes I was so unmotivated that I wouldn't even have the motivation to do my motivational practice. And so this brings me to why I need my third ingredient. And this third thing that I tried is called the setup method. I got this method partly from 2 locations. The first one was the book, The War of Art. And if you've read the book, The War of Art, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. It basically gives the illustration that the hardest thing to overcome every day is the resistance to getting started. When you have no external boss telling you what to do or whatever, and it's these creative thoughts that need to come out of you, the hardest part is getting started. Now, I combined that knowledge with what Erin May Henry, she's a YouTuber, and she had this idea of the setup method. And all it is basically saying, whatever you need to do tomorrow, set up for it today. Because step 1, the getting started, that's the hardest part. That's what you resist. That's the biggest hurdle. And so if the night before you overcome that hurdle and that resistance of getting started, the next day it becomes so much easier. All you need to do is show up. So an example of this is if I need to film on Tuesday, then Monday night I'll set up my camera, I'll set up my lights, I'll set out my outfit, I'll set out my straightener if I want to straighten my hair, basically so that all I have to do is wake up and show up. Everything is prepared, my notes are where they need to be. All I need to do is sit down, turn on the camera, and show up. And I make sure that I'm as ready as possible so that if there's any chance that that emotional, unmotivated side of me wants to come come out and doesn't want to defeat the resistance that day. It gives I use myself the fairest, easiest chance possible. Now, the issue that arises with this is we're now implementing a lot of strategies. We're journaling every day. We're setting out things the night before. We're making sure we're intentionally consuming and we're creating regularly. And this is becoming a lot. So this brings me to my fourth ingredient to kind of solve that problem. So what I was realizing in myself is that I have times of high motivation and times of low motivation. And so when I was highly motivated, I would set these systems in place. Okay, we're going to journal every day. We're going to do 3 videos a week. We're scripting this way. And I'm setting very high standards for myself. And I can follow those standards for a while because I'm motivated at the moment. However, once I dip down to those places of low motivation, those strategies that once worked for me at a highly motivated state are not working for me anymore. So what I forced myself to do is when I'm in a motivated state, the pace that I set myself is a pace that I can follow when I'm very unmotivated. And that's kind of a key. When you're very motivated, pull the reins back a little bit. If you feel like you can write a chapter every single morning when you're really motivated, but you can hardly write, maybe 2 chapters a week when you're unmotivated, I think the pace to set is the 2 chapters a week. It's kind of this whole tortoise and the hare. We can sprint forward and stop for a while, or I can just do a slower pace and sustain it. And so that has been very important to me. It is very possible for me when I'm motivated to do 3-4 videos a week. However, when I get very unmotivated, it's hard for me to do 1. And so what I've landed on is 2 videos a week is something that I can sustain. And when I'm very motivated, it's incredibly easy. But in those times, maybe the weather's not as nice, we're down in March, we're kind of dipping down. This is what I have to do. I'm like, 2 videos a week I think for me is sustainable. So my 5th and 6th strategies both come from the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, and he makes a lot of very interesting points in that book. The one strategy that I think has been very helpful is to look at your weekly workflow. Say you're writing a book, you're doing YouTube or whatever. What percentage of the time are you working on things that are in your zone of genius? It's things that you love to do and things that you really enjoy doing. And when I was kind of looking at my week, I was spending 2 out of the 5 days editing, and I personally cannot stand editing. And that was making me really not like YouTube sometimes. That was making me be very inconsistent. That was one of the biggest things that was causing my motivation to drop, because I'm spending so much time on these things that I don't like. And I'm like, editing really impacts videos, so I have to do it. But the fact of it is that if I don't like editing that much, my editing is not going to be very good, and it's not going to be as impactful as some people who really like editing and really spice it up and really add a lot of flavor with editing. So I consciously rearranged my flow so that I was spending more time on things that I liked. I love the planning part of the video, the learning part. I consciously put listening to podcasts in my routine. That wasn't something that was in my routine before. So you have to think about what parts of the process do you love, and try to spend a ton of time on those things, because then it's not such a struggle to be consistent. So in the 6th ingredient, another thing that I learned from the 4-Hour Workweek is that's the whole philosophy, work 4 hours a week. And he even challenged, you probably could get all your work done in 2 hours a week. Let's say you have a family member that had a heart attack and you need to leave work in 2 hours. You can, if you're working very quickly and very diligently on the things that are important, you can get a lot done in 2 hours. That's essentially the important part of a week's work, especially if you work in like an office job, or especially like YouTube. I control my schedule. So a lot of stuff that we do is not even really moving the needle. Sometimes I'll spend time rewatching my old videos. That is absolutely not moving the needle on my future videos. And so I was like, okay, you know what? This seems unrealistic, but I'll try it out. A 2-hour work week. So I kind of mapped it out. Okay, I mapped out 2 hours into 15-minute segments. And I realized I spend that much time alone on editing. I was like, okay, so I could film really quickly. Let's say I film in 20 minutes and then the rest of the time's editing. That's my whole week. My whole week is just filming and editing, and I can't stand editing. I don't want to do that. And so then it occurred to me, do I really have to edit? And at first I was like, well, yeah, obviously I have to edit. Everyone edits. And I was like, do I really have to edit? And so part of what this exercise does is, even if you don't end up implementing the 2-hour work week, is it really filters out what is really important here. Is editing really important? And so I committed to trying it for a month. I tried working 2 hours a week for a month. And so that basically meant outlining and filming. It didn't leave a lot of time, and I stopped editing my videos. And I asked for feedback. Do you guys like this no editing? Do you not like it? What do you guys think? Unanimous people were like, I really like it, actually. It seems more conversational. It seems a little bit more real. I looked at my audience retention, my stats on YouTube. My audience retention was better. It went up by an average of a minute, probably because my editing's not that great. And part of this whole 2-hour work week thing is making sure that you schedule in breaks. I think that's a big concept that he talks about in that book. When you think of school, you always had some break to look forward to. Okay, Christmas is coming, I'll have a break then. Or spring break is coming, I'll have a break then. Or summer's coming, or at some point I'll be done with school. I'll be done with middle school soon. In a few years I'll be done with high school. And there were always these end dates in sight. However, when you get into kind of adulthood and, I've got a YouTube channel, it's just kind of like for the foreseeable future, I'm doing YouTube. There's no end date in sight. So I just have to be consistent for forever. I can't be consistent for forever. There's no way I can be consistent for forever. So I've started intentionally scheduling in breaks. And this is something he talks about in the 4-Hour Work Week. So I've started scheduling in 4-day weekends at the end of every month, just so that there's something to look forward to. Okay, there's a break in the foreseeable future. And I've scheduled in week-long breaks at the end of every quarter. So at the time you're watching this, I'm probably in the middle of a week-long break, so my videos are going to be a little bit more spaced out than they normally would be. But that's how I'm staying consistent. I need to have something that says, I just need to work until this point, and then there will be a break. I don't need to be front-facing for that week. I can reflect, and I can retreat inward, and I can do whatever it is that I need to do. So I'm at this point now. That does cause some problems, this whole 2-hour work week philosophy. So I've now changed it. So I'm now doing 2 hours a day, but I've cut it in half from what I was doing before, and that has done wonders for motivation. Spending times on things that I love doing and decreasing the time altogether. Do not prioritize busyness over being productive. I think I get more done. I enjoy it more. The quality is better because my energy is better, and so these 2 ingredients have really helped a lot. So at this point, once we get to the 7th ingredient, basically what all of these ingredients so far have been are ways to motivate me when I feel unmotivated. It's okay, I'm unmotivated, something's wrong with me. Okay, I need to get motivated. And it's all these strategies for how I can stay consistent and stay disciplined and stay motivated. And then I came to realize there's a huge part of that that's just normal. Just to realize that I'm going to go through ups and downs, and that is normal. And in fact, the times that I go through ups and downs, it's probably indicative of kind of this larger thing that everyone in my vicinity, we're all kind of going through this lower motivation cycle right now. And that is okay. To some extent, that is normal. And so the 7th ingredient is all about giving myself permission to just chill with the strategies when I'm feeling less motivated. So my number one goal, even when I'm unmotivated, is to stay consistent. So if that's the goal, it's just, okay, I want to do 2 videos a week, and I want to do 2 videos a week even when I'm unmotivated. I'm giving myself permission to do the bare minimum that I can handle today. Okay, I need to film 2 videos today. What's that look like? What's the bare minimum of that? Well, maybe I don't need to straighten my hair today. That takes some time. Maybe I don't need to do makeup today. Maybe I don't need to do the whole shebang. And so on days when I'm less motivated, I give myself permission to do the bare minimum. And the bare minimum is better than doing nothing. It's better than me quitting for 3 months. Sometimes that perfectionism would cause me to quit because I'm judging my content. It has to be this high quality. I have to do my makeup. I have to straighten my hair. These are all things that compound. All these little things, all these little details compound, and they make it very hard to stay consistent and to stay motivated. So I just gave myself permission to do the bare minimum, and that has added up to something over the course of the last 4 months. My channel has grown so much. It was during a time of me giving myself permission to do the bare minimum that my channel grew the most in the last 4 months. That would have normally been a time when I quit. But instead of quitting, I stuck with it. I allowed myself to be more reflective, to lean into the consumption. A lot of times when I'm feeling unmotivated, it's really unmotivated to do that creation side, to be front-facing. And during that time, I just give myself permission, okay, this is less of a time that I'm interested in the front-facing things. I'm still going to do it because I have the goal of being consistent. But because I'm a little more lethargic, I'm going to use this time to reflect and to journal and to recharge and get those good ideas that I need. Instead of spending time editing or the time that I would have spent straightening my hair, I'm going to spend that time listening to a podcast. I'm going to spend that time reading. And it oftentimes are those times that propel me up into the times of my greatest productivity. And this is the 8th final ingredient that really made everything come together. I just finished reading Will Smith's memoir, and he is someone who has had a high level of productivity, especially in like his 20s. If in reading about some of his story, he has so much. He has so many great movies that he's made. He was very productive in a very short amount of time, and he really talks about to the extent of which kind of those negative emotions, like shame or anxiety or not feeling good enough, to the extent that those fueled him. And I think that those kind of emotions fuel people in a different way. For some people, it really fuels them into productivity. I'm going to prove that I'm good enough by doing a lot. Now, some people are the opposite. Some people have that shame and that insecurity, and that causes them to retreat. And instead of really putting themselves out there to prove they're valuable, they just are so intimidated, they kind of just retreat. After so much perfectionism, they just kind of retreat. And that's the sort of thing that I tend to do. It's like, okay, I can do it, and then I just retreat. And he said this statement in his book that was so profound. He's like, he said the universe, he's like, or the world, he's like the world is already hard enough. I don't need it to be the world plus me against me. And the way I would think about it is, YouTube is already hard enough. You know, the platform, analytics, the way things are, there's already a lot of stuff that's a little complicated about it. In an ideal world, it's YouTube versus Alexis, or maybe the YouTube algorithm versus Alexis. I will figure it out. I can overcome this algorithm. It's the algorithm versus me. I will figure out how YouTube works, and I will overcome it. Now, if there are some times that I'm feeling shameful or anxious, I become an enemy. So now I'm on the opposing team. It's the platform YouTube plus Alexis's shame against Alexis. You don't want to be your own worst enemy with perfectionism, with shame. And I found that a lot of times the root of this whole thing, the root of not being consistent and of quitting and lacking motivation. Sometimes I really am lacking motivation, but sometimes it's self-criticism and it's shame and resistance that's really stopping me. And so that's something that you have to consider. To what extent is perfectionism the thing that's causing you to not be consistent? And to what extent is that perfectionism caused by shame? And I think shame is a big cause of perfectionism. When you're feeling like you're not enough, it can never be quite perfect. You're never doing something quite right enough. And I think that is a big mindset to work through. And so I spent a month kind of journaling on this idea of, am I enough? And what am I trying to gain from this? And really kind of diving into that and doing some affirmations. And I think when you come to YouTube or writing a book or whatever it is you're doing from the frame of, I am enough, that takes away so much of the barrier. Showing up on YouTube becomes so much easier when you're not sitting there critiquing yourself the whole time. You do not want to be your own worst enemy. You do not want to be the thing causing you to fail. And I think so much of the time, people are their own worst enemy. So yeah, this is my kind of like 8-ingredient smoothie. I recommend doing all of these things. All of these things taken together are so helpful. I still do the setup method. I still do this start to today journal, and I've even incorporated the 100-day goal journal. I have these daily motivational practices. I'm doing the setup method. I'm doing 2 hours a week, so I'm not doing the 2-hour work week, but I still have kind of incorporated that idea of shrinking things down to what are the productive, meaningful things. I still have cut out editing to a large extent. I do edit some, but not nearly to the extent that I was doing it, and all of these things taken together have really helped me be consistent. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.